We're going to continue our draft coverage this time with the Washington Wizards that have the number 2 overall, the number 26 and 52nd overall picks in this draft. With the number 2 overall, would the Washington Wizards take whoever the Hawks pass up on at number 1? We'll talk a little bit about that and why the Washington Wizards may be in a unique spot to find 2 starters in a draft, even though it's looked at as a weaker draft. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number 1 place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number 1 spot for everything basketball related. I'm one of the hosts here, Haize, holding it down for the team, and we're continuing our draft coverage. We started off with the Atlanta Hawks that had the number 1 overall pick. We're moving on to the Washington Wizards at number 2. For those that don't know or did not watch the Atlanta Hawks video, the way we do our draft coverage here is that we go pick by pick in the first round, but as we're going by those teams, we'll also look at the other picks that those teams have to kind of give that whole team's kind of draft board, draft position, and outlook as a whole. It's this kind of the easiest way to kind of go about it, at least in my brain. Hopefully you guys appreciate it and enjoy the way that's going to go down there. So the way that I like to do it is I like to look at a mix of what some of the mock draft has, right? So I go look at places like Bleacher Report, ESPN, The Ringer, and take a look at all those kind of mock drafts and then kind of add in kind of my own kind of feeling on what the team may need and things like that to go through it. We're with the Washington Wizards today, and the Wizards at the number 2 overall pick. You know, it's always interesting that too, right? Because, you know, depending on who is either taken at number 1 or maybe falls down to number 2, depending on how you look at that, it could make the number 2 pick easy, especially in most drafts where you have maybe 2 really good prospects that really kind of stand out head and shoulders above the rest. But in a draft like this, it really comes down to your own personal evaluation of these players. And because it's looked on as a weaker draft as far as superstar talent, doesn't mean some stars won't come out of this draft. It opens up a lot of different areas that the Washington Wizards could go at number 2. So I'm going to talk about a few of those scenarios. This one's going to be a much longer episode than what the Hawks episode was because they only have 1 pick in this draft. The Washington Wizards have 3 picks in this draft, 2 of them being in the first round. And looking at their positions of need, the Washington Wizards, I don't know if they're going to attack it looking at specific positions or just go best available at every pick, considering how bad they were last year and how they are really trying to, the Wizards are one of those teams that are never really free agent destinations. They always have to really either trade or draft the players that come to that team. And so by that, their evaluation of these players is going to be really important. And so, of course, Alexander Sarr is kind of looked at as the head and shoulders best prospect in this draft by a lot of outlets, right? Not universal, but most athletes have that. And if for some reason the Atlanta Hawks do pass on Alexander Sarr, it would make sense for the Washington Wizards to snap him up. He's at a position of need for them at the center position. When you look at what he can bring as far as being a floor spacer, as far as, being a player that can play multiple positions, can guard multiple positions, his on-ball defense is already damn near elite, right? And he still has more than enough room to grow in those areas as well. Really good shot blocker already. Already talked about the positional versatility, and he does not back down. This dude has the dog in him right away, and he's a more modern style big of where it seems like bigs are going in the NBA as far as being one of those bigs that can handle the ball like a wing. That's what I said in my Atlanta Hawks analysis of him. He can catch the ball and shoot behind the three-point line, which is really good. A solid enough passer as well, who really at sometimes makes some point guard-like passes that you're just looking at and saying, wow, that's crazy. His mobility as well at that center position is out of this world when it comes down to it. He shoots a lot of jumpers, which is something that kind of stands out as a negative around about him. But overall, he's really growing that aspect of his three-point shooting game, has had some up and downs when it comes to that. But, it projects to be one of those players that at the minimum, you can't leave him open for 3 because he's going to be able to drain that. Is he ever going to be a volume shooting 3-point big? There's reasons to believe that could be the thing, but we'll see what happens with that. He needs to progress some as a decision maker because he does have that upside as maybe being kind of that point forward type play and mentality and those type of things. But other than that, Alexander Sarr is really separating himself, it sounds like, in the combine as being that number 1 pick. And that's why I do think the Hawks take him. But if for some reason the Hawks do something silly, or just let me not say that, let me not be negative, or if they do, evaluate a different talent that they take at number one, if he falls there to the Washington Wizards, you kind of got to take them, I think. But then you have Zachary Richesher, again, a 6'9", 200-pound small forward, power forward combo. This is a guy who, per a lot of draft boards, they have him as the number 2 overall talent in this draft. And because of that, if the Atlanta Hawks just take the best player available, it would make sense. He's been drawn comps to like Michael Porter Jr., things like that, with, of course, a better, higher defensive upside is what he's looked at right now. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to hit it, but he does have that higher defensive upside. Really good catch and shoot player on top of that. 6'8" with a 6'7" wingspan, 19 years old, one of the younger players in the draft. He's going to be 19 basically the majority of his rookie year. So take that for what you will. Can take shots in movement, can play multiple positions for you, and he's just developing as a knockdown, lockout shooter that you cannot overlook at all. And so his ability to handle the ball at his size is really good as well. Solid decision maker. He makes quick decisions, and he gets out in transition, which you really like in him as well. When you look at it in 2022 and 23, he made 34.3% of his threes. That went up a lot last year as well. So he's growing in that aspect of the game. His three-point shooting is becoming more consistent. One of the biggest struggles for him is finishing at the rim in half-court offense specifically. He's only made 37.9% of his attempts at the rim in 2022 and 23. Last season in 2024, that went up to 51%. So it's definitely showing an ability to kind of grow outside of that. But again, super talented player. Finishing at the free throw line, 72.6%. So maybe you're a little bit worried about that. But Richesher is a player that most mocks have him going at number 2 to the Atlanta Hawks. And so that's really where a lot of the kind of more general mocks kind of stop at when it comes to it. But then there are some that are looking outside the box for the Atlanta Hawks. So other options that they do have at that number 2 overall pick could be a player like Rob Dillingham. Now, we know that the Washington Wizards, Trey Jones, is a unrestricted free agent this season. They do have bird rights on him, so they could re-sign him, even if they need to go over the cap to do so. But Rob Dillingham is a real big name to watch in this draft because he is shooting up. The draft combine did wonders for Rob Dillingham, and I don't think he makes it past number 4 at the San Antonio Spurs unless they make a trade for like a Trae Young or something like that. But I think when you look at Rob Dillingham and how he's growing, 6'1", 19 years old, so still one of the younger players in this draft, 15.2 points per game last year at Kentucky, as well as 4 assists per game, almost 3 rebounds at being 6'1" with a 6'2" wingspan. This guy absolutely gets buckets. And I would say that there's an outside chance of him possibly being that pick at number 2 for the Washington Wizards if they decide that one of the big men lower down is one of their targets at number 26. We'll get to that when we get to that 26 overall pick. This guy's a smooth playmaker. He makes passes off the dribble, as well as kickouts. He's a very intelligent, smart player. His catch and shoot three-point ability is really good as well. He can hit that with movement. He moves without the ball. Really good, tenacious player that you really like. Pull-up threat. His float game's immaculate as well. This guy, I think that he is going to turn a lot of heads in the NBA. He's a guy that I think can have a Jalen Brunson type effect at some point if he develops the way that it seems like he can. The effort that he plays with, the heart that he plays with is really good. He gets really active on defense, but as you guys know, with those smaller, especially point guards, you always kind of have to hide those guys or at least have a big that's able to cover up if they get beat out on the perimeter. He's going to be attacked on the perimeter, measuring at only 6'1", with the overtime elite. So that's something that you got to look for. He's also not only short, but kind of slight of frame, which brings about its own concerns as well. He's going to have to improve on his accuracy in the NBA level as well. Sometimes he can gamble on passes, which turn into turnovers, and that can lead to a problem as well. And there's some questions on if he'll be able to finish at the NBA level around the rim. He was solid at that at college, but again, the length at the NBA level, could that cause Dillingham some trouble? There's reasons to believe that. So that's why Dillingham may not be a pick here, but I would not be surprised if Dillingham goes in the top 5 of this draft, and I wouldn't be surprised if, depending on what they have planned and how they evaluate what they can get at number 26, if they may go big there, because there's still some quality bigs at the end of this draft. But overall, I think Richesher is probably the most likely candidate. Donovan Clingan as a center here, as well as maybe somebody that they could look at Also, at being 7'3", 280 pounds, I would not be surprised if maybe Clingan is on their board. But then again, the Ringer, for example, has the Washington Wizards taking Clingan here. What he does in the interior, 7'1" with a 7'6" wingspan, all those type of things. 20 years old, had solid enough combine numbers, a really good defender in the pick and roll defense, that drop coverage that, some people are kind of moving away from. You got to look at, he also box out really well. But, if it may be looked at as a reach for Clingan, again, the Ringer has him going here at number 2 to the Washington Wizards. I don't know how confident I feel in that, but those are kind of, I think, the most likely candidates for the Washington Wizards at number 2. Then getting into number 26 for the Wizards, this is where things are really dependent upon their evaluation with that number 2 overall pick. But I have a couple of guys here. I'm going to start off with the big that I think has tons of potential in this draft. This is one of my favorite bigs in this draft. Honestly, I just don't know if the Wizards would pass up some of the talent at the beginning of the draft to do this. And listen, if they go Risha Share, they could still go big here at number 26. But the one I want to look at is it's Ev Missy, French name. Gotta learn how to pronounce it correctly. This is a guy who has tremendous upside. 19 years old, 6'10", with a 7'2" wingspan, lobs, especially if you do get a point guard in this draft. He's a lob threat. He blocks shots. He rebounds well. He hustles. All those type of things. Has that frame, that NBA frame right away that you're not really worried about. A solid pick and roll defender as well. Has good hands. So if you get somebody who can get him the ball, he's going to be able to finish as well. His rebounding is going to be something he's able to do right away in the NBA, especially that offensive rebounding. He has great offensive rebounding percentages there. And I think that this is a guy who, on defense, especially with the way that he box out and things like that, he's able to get those rebounds. He's going to be able to thrive off putbacks, pick and roll offense in the NBA level, at least initially to start. And that's the thing that you really got to look at with Yves Missy. I like him a whole hell of a lot. He doesn't shoot the best free throw percentage. So that's something that you got to worry about. Not a great passer at all either. So you really want to have that solid point guard play, or at least solid passers all the way around him. That's how you're going to get the most out of him. But there's also some questions about his conditioning. Only plays a little bit over 20 minutes per game. So you got to worry about, if you're playing a higher pace NBA offense, is he going to be able to stay with that? But his ability to catch lobs, things like that, if the Wizards do go point guard in this draft and feel like it's a solid point guard that can start, get him the ball, I would not be surprised if Missy is on the Washington Wizards draft board as well. And then another one that I want to talk about, an actual point guard that I like on this potentially for the Washington Wizards here as well, is Tyler Kolek. This is a guy who, as far as the point guard aspect of the game, the draft combine did really good numbers for him as well. But I don't know if it'd be a reach here for the Washington Wizards. Some mocks have him going low first. Some have him going as early second. So that's something that you got to look at as well in this one. But he's drawn comparisons to a mixture between Jalen Brunson and Goran Dragic per some draft experts. Clutch shooter, definitely floor general, can finish around the rim, catch and shoot three-point ability as well. This guy is a point guard in the truest sense of the word. He brings the point guardsmanship right away, and that's how he's going to thrive. He can also attack the basket. He has a quick first step enough. Will it be quick enough at the NBA level? Bring some questions. But if you have driving kick players out there with him, he's going to find them. He can also take pull-up threes. He's not hesitant to do that. 15 points per game for him in his last year in college, 7.7 assists, 5 rebounds per game. He hit the three ball at almost a 40% clip as well. This guy is crafty. He's intense. And I know you don't look at him and think like athleticism. He's not jump out the gym athlete or anything like that, but he does attack, has a quick first step, and is athletic enough that I really do like him. And his release is really good as well. He can speed it up a little bit at the NBA level, especially with his size disadvantage he may be at and things like that. And he's going to be targeted defensively, absolutely. So if you can have some defensive-minded players around him, and especially defensive big that can cover up for him, I think he can do wonders. But I would not be surprised if he's on the board there for the Washington Wizards as well. And then the last one that I want to talk about that's a potential for the Washington Wizards, if they do not go Risha Share with the number 2 overall pick, is a guy who's another wing, but is a wing that I think has really good upside in this draft, and that's Bobby Klintman. This is a guy who is going to be overlooked. That's just what it is. He's going to be overlooked by a lot of mocks, a lot of drafts, but I think he's a guy that you can't overlook too much. Or 4 and forward, some people have him going right here at number 26 to the to the Wizards. But 6'10", 7-foot wingspan, 21 years old, has drawn comps to like a Trevor Ariza, Nicholas Batum type players in this as well. Can guard multiple positions, already a very switchable defender. And if you're going to go kind of maybe questionable defense out on the perimeter anywhere, this guy, switchable, he can probably end up guarding 4 positions at the minimum in the NBA level. Not a great ball handler. He has solid vision, so maybe you're looking at some point forward potential from him. But again, he's one of those high floor players in this draft. Has an extremely high floor just because of his shooting, his competition level, his defense. He is going to be one of those players that sticks around in the NBA for a long time. Questions, though. Not a very strong player. At being 6'10", 235 pounds with a 7-foot wingspan, you would expect him to be stronger than what he is. Hasn't really shown that a whole hell of a lot. The lateral quickness as well may be a thing for him when you look at it switching a lot, right? Even though I do think he can guard a lot of positions. He's gotten burnt on 1-on-1s before, so that's something that you have to look at as well. And at the end of the day, like sometimes with the more physical defenders, he's not able to get that separation. Doesn't really have great explosiveness either. But here at 26, I think you can do a lot worse potentially if he's there. So that's the players that I have on the board at 26 for the Washington Wizards. And then at number 52, because it's a second-round pick, I'm not going to go deep into the draft bag here, but a guy that I like here for the Washington Wizards at 52 and to keep an eye on is Oso Ighodaro. This is a center out of Marquette. This guy at 6'9", a 6'11" wingspan. He's drawn comps to like Al Horford, which is really good. Float game, really good feel for the game. Super well-rounded defender that's going to be able to be switchable and do some rim protection for you at the next level. Not necessarily a huge athlete, but has the timing, understands how to use his length, things like that. He sets hard screens as well. So if you have point guards, they're going to need that little bit of ability. And in pick and rolls, he's definitely a lob threat as well. Has a soft touch around the rim. Can get out in transition with guys. So if you are looking to play that faster pace offense, this is one of the guys that I look at and I say, if you get him in the second round, I think that he can turn into a consistent bench role player for you, maybe with upsides of maybe a starter depending on how the rest of your team is filled out. Undersized a little bit, but he brings the size and strength. You really don't look at him as being small. He can be a small ball center for you. Doesn't necessarily get the rebounds, though. That's the one thing with him. 7 rebounds per game, which is solid enough, right? But you see him get boxed out a lot. He's not a shooter at all, not a threat to stretch the floor. But if you're looking for a pick and roll defending big that can do some rebounding and block some shots for you in the 50s in the second round, I think you can do a lot worse than that. But that's kind of my thoughts of players on the board for the Washington Wizards. Let me know any guys that you think could or should be on the board for the Washington Wizards as well down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything basketball related, and we'll continue these draft videos tomorrow, man. I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video with the draft, probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.